Imagine a land where the heartbeat of life once thrived. Rivers flowed like veins through the earth. Animals roamed freely under the vast African sky, and the people danced to the rhythm of drums that echoed across the hills. This was the Zulu kingdom, a place of unmatched beauty and unity, blessed by the ancestors and guarded by the spirits of the land. But all of that was gone now. The air once filled with the sweet aroma of blooming flowers was now heavy with dust and despair. The rivers that had sustained life for generations were nothing more than cracked beds of earth. The cattle once strong and proud lay lifeless, their bones scattered like forgotten memories. The laughter of children had been replaced by the cries of the hungry. The once thriving kingdom stood on the brink of ruin, a shadow of its former glory. The people turned to their elders, the keepers of wisdom, for answers. They prayed to Unkulunkulu, the Great Spirit, and to their ancestors, but the heavens remained silent. Day by day, hope drained from their hearts like water from a broken vessel. Whispers of a curse spread through the villages. The kingdom, they believed, had angered the ancestors, and the punishment was swift and merciless. Amidst this despair, the royal kraal was no different. The king, a mighty warrior whose name once inspired fear in his enemies, now sat hunched in the center of the great council hut. His eyes, once sharp as the spear he carried, were clouded with worry. Around him the elders argued and debated, their voices rising in frustration. Some spoke of sacrifices to appease the spirits. Others suggested abandoning the land entirely. But no one had a solution. Then on the night when the moon was at its fullest, an ominous event shook the kingdom to its core. A great storm gathered in the skies, not one of rain but of lightning and thunder that roared like an angry beast. In the chaos of the storm, the voice of a spirit was said to have been heard whispering a prophecy. From the smallest of hands will come the greatest of changes. The one who walks with the heart of a lion will mend what is broken. The people were confused. Who could this smallest of hands be? Surely no warrior or elder could be the answer. But in the corner of the council hut stood a young boy, his eyes bright with determination. This was Inkosana Nchinchi, the little prince. And though no one could have predicted it, this child would soon embark on a journey to save them all, a journey that would take him to the edge of the known world, into the realm of myth and legend. This is where our story begins, a broken kingdom, a desperate people, and a boy whose courage would forever change the fate of his land. In the heart of the chaos, where men of great stature trembled with fear, and the wise whispered of doom, stood a figure no one expected. Inkosana Nchinchi, the little prince. He was not a towering warrior clad in iron, nor an elder with years of wisdom etched into his face. He was a boy, small, slender, and unassuming. But there was something about him that demanded attention. It wasn't his size or his age. It was the fire in his eyes, a spark of defiance against despair, and a quiet but unshakable strength that even the strongest warriors lacked. From the moment he spoke, the room fell silent. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with a conviction far beyond his years. "I will go," he said, his words cutting through the din like the sharp edge of a spear. The elders exchanged glances, their faces a mix of disbelief and curiosity. The boy's father, the king, hesitated, torn between pride and fear. How could his youngest, his most fragile, be the one to rise when others faltered? But Inkosana Nchinchi was no ordinary child. From the day he was born, the ancestors seemed to have marked him for greatness. His mother often spoke of the strange dreams she had before his birth, visions of a lion roaring beneath a starry sky, its golden mane shimmering like sunlight. The boy himself seemed connected to the spirit world in ways that unsettled even the most devout elders. He spoke to animals, predicted storms, and had an uncanny ability to calm the restless spirits that haunted the land. Some whispered that he carried the soul of an ancient warrior. Others believed he was a direct gift from Unkulunkulu, the great creator. Despite his tender age, Inkosana Nchinchi possessed a mind sharper than any blade. He saw solutions where others saw problems, and his courage was infectious. When the village children played, he was always the leader, guiding them with a natural authority that no one dared question. But this moment was different. This wasn't a game. This was life and death for his people, for his kingdom, for the very land that had nurtured them. Do you know what you are asking for? Child one, Elder finally asked, his voice heavy with doubt. I know, the boy replied, meeting the man's gaze with unwavering confidence. And I am not afraid. In that moment, something shifted in the room. The storm outside seemed to quiet, as if the heavens themselves were listening. The warriors lowered their eyes in shame, and the elders, for all their years of wisdom, were left speechless. This was no ordinary child. This was Inkosana, Inchinchi, the little prince. And though his hands were small and his frame slight, he carried the weight of an entire kingdom on his shoulders. His journey would test him in ways no one could imagine. But one thing was certain: legends are not born, they are made, and Inkosana Inchinchi was ready to carve his name into history. It began with a silence so profound it was deafening. The storm that had raged across the kingdom had stilled, leaving behind a sky heavy with foreboding. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the land, and in its light the people gathered in the great council kraal. Fear crackled in the air, thick as smoke, as the elders addressed the crowd. They spoke of the prophecy, the mysterious words uttered by the Spirit during the storm. From the smallest of hands will come the greatest of changes. The one who walks with the heart of a lion will mend what is broken. The words spread like wildfire, igniting hope in some and dread in others. Who could this chosen one be? Warriors clad in their battle scars and pride puffed their chests, certain it would be one of them. Elders weighed down by years of wisdom believed the task was theirs to shoulder. But as debates grew heated and tempers flared, a voice cut through the noise. A voice young but unyielding: I will go. Heads turned in unison. Gasps rippled through the crowd as all eyes fell on the speaker. Inkosana Inchinchi. The little prince stood at the edge of the firelight, his face illuminated by its flickering glow. He was small, barely more than a child, but the fire in his eyes rivaled the flames that danced before him. You, a warrior, scoffed, his laughter dripping with disbelief. This is no place for boys. The journey is fraught with danger, riddled with tests that would crush even the mightiest of us. What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed? Inkosana and Shinchi stepped forward, undeterred by the doubt in the man's voice. Because I am not afraid, he said simply. The room fell silent. It wasn't arrogance that fueled his words, nor naivety. It was something deeper, an unshakable conviction, born not of experience, but of faith. He knew with every fiber of his being that the task was his to bear. The elders whispered among themselves, their faces etched with worry. Could this boy truly be the one foretold? His father, the king, sat in silence, his hands clenched into fists. He wanted to stop him, to forbid him from embarking on such a perilous path. But he also knew that the fire burning in his son's heart could not be extinguished. And so with a heavy heart the king spoke. If you are to go, you will go as a prince of this kingdom. You will carry the hopes of our people and the blessings of the ancestors. But remember this, my son, courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it, with nothing more than his faith and the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders. Inkosana. And Shinchi prepared to step into the unknown. The road ahead was dark and treacherous, but destiny had called, and the little prince had answered. As dawn broke over the parched land, Inkosana and Shinchi stood at the edge of his kingdom, the horizon stretching endlessly before him. Behind him the people watched in silence, their hopes resting on the shoulders of a boy barely tall enough to hold a warrior's shield. He carried no grand weapons, only a small satchel filled with water, herbs, and a charm gifted by the Sangoma, a talisman said to connect him to the ancestors. With a steady breath, the little prince stepped forward, leaving behind his home, his family, and the life he knew. The journey ahead was not for the faint-hearted. The path twisted through landscapes that seemed alive with danger. The first test came in the form of a forest, its ancient trees towering like silent sentinels. The air was thick with whispers, voices of spirits warning him to turn back. But Inkosana and Shinchi, though young, had a heart unshaken by fear. Show me the way, he whispered to the trees, clutching the charm around his neck. And as if hearing his plea, the wind shifted, parting the mist and revealing a narrow path. The deeper he ventured, the more perilous the journey became. In the belly of the forest, he faced the Impondulu, The lightning bird, a creature of shadow and storm. Its feathers crackled with electricity as it blocked his path, its sharp beak ready to strike. Most would have fled, but not the little prince. "I am not your enemy," he said, his voice calm, despite the terror in his veins. He reached into his satchel, pulling out a handful of sacred herbs, blessed by the Sangoma. "Take this offering and let me pass." The creature hesitated, its glowing eyes narrowing before it spread its wings and vanished into the storm clouds, leaving the path clear. Beyond the forest, the journey grew lonelier. Days turned to weeks as he crossed barren deserts where the sun beat down mercilessly. His body grew weaker, but his spirit remained unbroken. At night, the stars seemed to speak to him, their shimmering light a reminder that the ancestors were watching. "Guide my steps," he prayed, and the winds would answer, nudging him toward his destination. The greatest trial came when he reached the caves of the echoing ancestors, a sacred place said to hold the answers he sought. But the caves were guarded by a riddle, a test of wisdom and patience. The voice of the ancestors boomed through the darkness. "What can be given but never taken back, Inkosana?" Inshinchi thought deeply, his mind racing. Finally he whispered, "A promise." The cave walls trembled and the ground opened, revealing a pool of water, the lifeblood of his kingdom. With the water secured, the little prince began the long journey home. He had faced fear, loneliness, and death, but he had emerged stronger, wiser, and braver. Inkosana and Shinchi was no longer just a boy. He was a legend in the making. The world had tested him, and he had proved himself worthy. The road ahead was still long, but one thing was certain. The little prince had conquered the journey, and his people's salvation was within reach. The sun hung low in the sky, its fiery orange light casting long shadows across the land, as Inkosana and Shinchi approached the final challenge. The kingdom's fate now rested on his young shoulders, and every step he took felt heavier than the last. Before him loomed the mountain of souls, its jagged peaks piercing the sky like the teeth of a great beast. At its summit lay the sacred pool, the source of life that would restore his drought-stricken kingdom. But guarding it was the ultimate trial, the Umoya Wesitunsi, the spirit of the shadow. The air grew colder with every step as Inkosana climbed the mountain. He could feel the presence of the spirit, its energy wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. At the summit, the pool shimmered under the fading sunlight, its crystal-clear water glistening with divine energy. But as he approached, the ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged a monstrous figure. The Umoya Wesitunsi was neither fully man nor beast, a shifting mass of darkness, with glowing red eyes that burned with malice. "Who dares disturb my sanctuary?" The spirit roared, its voice echoing like thunder across the mountaintop. "I am Inkosana." "And Shinshi," the boy replied, standing tall despite the fear clawing at his heart. "I have come to restore life to my people." The spirit's laughter was a chilling sound, a mix of mockery and menace. "A child dares challenge me. Your people's suffering is their punishment for their greed and neglect. What makes you believe you are worthy of this gift? I do not seek this water for myself," Inkosana said firmly. "I seek it for those who cannot fight for themselves. If a price must be paid, I will pay it." The spirit paused, its form shifting and swirling, as if testing the boy's resolve. Then, without warning, it lunged its shadowy tendrils, reaching for him. Inkosana and Shinchi dodged and fought back, not with weapons, but with the strength of his spirit. He held his talisman high, the charm glowing with ancestral power, and began to chant the sacred words taught to him by the Sangoma. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in pain, but the spirit was relentless. It tested him with illusions, visions of his family suffering, his kingdom in ruins. "You are too small, too weak," the spirit hissed. "Turn back and I will spare you." But the little prince did not falter. "I am not small," he declared. "I am the voice of my people. I am their strength." With one final chant, the talisman blazed with light, piercing the darkness. The Umoya Wesitunzi let out a deafening roar before dissolving into nothingness. The mountain fell silent, and the pool glowed brighter than ever, exhausted but victorious. Inkosana and Shinchi knelt by the water, cupping it in his hands. As the cool liquid touched his skin, he felt a surge of energy, a promise fulfilled. He had faced the ultimate test and emerged triumphant. The kingdom's salvation was his to deliver. The first drop of water fell from Inkosana and Shinsha's hands onto the parched soil of his kingdom, and the earth seemed to breathe again. The cracked, lifeless ground began to stir, as if awakening from a long, agonizing slumber. A ripple of change moved through the land, spreading outward like a wave. The sky, once heavy with despair, now opened up, and the first raindrops fell gentle at first, then faster, until the heavens unleashed a torrent of life-giving water. The people gathered in the royal kraal stared in disbelief as the rain washed over them. Children danced their laughter, piercing through the silence that had gripped the kingdom for so long. Elders raised their hands to the sky, tears mixing with the rain as they whispered prayers of gratitude to the ancestors. The cattle, thought to be on the brink of death, raised their heads to drink from the new streams forming in the dry riverbeds. Life once stolen was returning, and then from the horizon came the figure of the little prince. His silhouette emerged through the rain, his small frame carrying the weight of a journey that had nearly broken him. But his steps were steady, his head held high. Inkosana. And Shinji had not just returned as a boy, he had returned as a hero, a legend whose name would be sung for generations. The crowd erupted into cheers as he entered the kraal. His father, the king, rushing forward to embrace him. "You have done what no warrior, no elder could do," the king said, his voice trembling with emotion. "You have saved us all, but Inkosana." Shinji shook his head. "I did not do it alone," he said. "The ancestors guided me, the spirits tested me, and the people's hope gave me strength. This victory belongs to all of us." The elders, humbled by the boy's wisdom and courage, knelt before him. "You are more than a prince," one of them said. "You are the heart of this kingdom, the bridge between our people and the ancestors." The rain continued to fall, cleansing the land of its sorrow as the people celebrated. But for Inkosana and Shinji, the journey had changed him forever. He had seen the darkest corners of the world, faced creatures born of shadow, and carried the weight of his people's survival on his small shoulders. He had learned that true strength wasn't in size or age, but in courage, selflessness, and the unwavering belief in something greater than oneself. As the celebrations went on, Inkosana and Shinji stood at the edge of the kraal, looking out at the rejuvenated land. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if the ancestors themselves were smiling down on him. He knew his story would be told for generations, not as a tale of a boy who saved a kingdom, but as a reminder that even the smallest among us can rise to greatness. And so the little prince became a legend, his name forever etched into the soul of the land he saved. Long after the rains had fallen and the rivers had filled their beds once more, the story of Inkosana and Shinji, the little prince, echoed through the land. It was told by elders around the fire, sung in the lullabies of mothers, and etched into the minds of children who dreamed of courage and greatness. The kingdom, once on the brink of ruin, now thrived, its people forever grateful to the boy who carried their hopes through darkness and despair. But the legacy of Inkosana and Shinji was more than the return of rain or the revival of crops. His story became a symbol, a beacon of hope for all who doubted their strength, for those who believed their voice was too small to be heard. He had proven that even the smallest spark could ignite a fire, that even a child could face the fury of the spirits and emerge victorious. The little prince's journey was not without scars. He bore them silently in the quiet moments when he gazed at the horizon, remembering the trials he endured, the lightning bird, the riddles of the ancestors, and the shadowy specter of Umoya Wesitunzi. But those scars were not wounds to him. They were reminders of his resilience, badges of honor, that told a story of bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. In the years that followed, the kingdom flourished under Inkosana and Shinji's guidance. Though still young, he became a voice of reason in the royal court, a figure of inspiration to his people. Warriors sought his counsel before battle, elders deferred to his wisdom, and even the animals of the land seemed to sense his connection to the spirits. He was not just a ruler in waiting, he was a guardian of the kingdom's soul. But the little prince remained humble, always remembering the journey that had shaped him. "It was not I alone who saved the kingdom," He would say to those who marveled at his deeds, "It was the faith of my people, the guidance of the ancestors, and the lessons of the spirits that showed me the way." In time, Inkosana and Chinch's tales spread far beyond the borders of his land. Travelers carried the story to distant kingdoms, where it became a legend told in countless tongues. Artists painted his journey, poets wrote verses of his bravery, and storytellers weaved his name into the fabric of their songs. Yet for all the glory, Inkosana and Chinchi never sought recognition. He remained the same boy who had set out with nothing but a talisman and a heart full of determination. To him, the greatest victory was not the applause or the adoration. It was seeing his people smile again, hearing their laughter, and knowing that the land was alive once more. And so as the stars watched over the kingdom, the name Inkosana and Chinchi lived on. Not just in stories, but in the hearts of all who heard it. The little prince had become a legend, a testament to the power of courage, the strength of spirit, and the enduring belief that even the smallest among us can change the world.